Hey again everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another installment in our ongoing new figure showcase series. And for this series we basically do a quick review of a recent release that I'm adding into the collection and see if I think it was a worthy pickup. Today we're delving back into third party, and that world does come with its pros and cons, and we're going to be taking a look at the 108 Toys 6-scale version of Castor Troy from Face Off, a John Woo masterpiece from the 90s that I still watch over and over again even today. So if you haven't watched Face Off, I would highly recommend it. I think it still remains a staple of a great action movie, and it still holds up. Granted, the premise itself is out there. Basically having an FBI agent played by John Travolta pursuing Castor Troy played by Nicolas Cage, who's one of the worst criminals in the world for hire. There's a little more to it that I won't go into just in case you haven't watched the movie, but after initial confrontation they discover that there is a planned attack on LA, and Sean Archer, John Travolta's character, is asked by FBI intelligence to undergo a drastic surgical procedure where they remove his face and replace it with that of his arch nemesis, Castor Troy. And then he gets dumped into a prison to try to extract information from Castor's brother Paul, and as expected, things don't go well, and basically the two characters end up switching faces and lives. So it's like a more brutal version of Freaky Friday. And look, just reiterating that I'll be the first to admit it sounds way out there, right? Just when you kind of say that. But the execution is really phenomenal, and a lot of credit goes to John Woo and also to John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, who both just deliver awesome performances. So let's talk figures. Obviously, as a huge fan of the movie, when 108 Toys announced these, I just felt like I needed to have them in my collection. I have no previous experience on my end with this company, which I will warn all of you is always a sign to proceed with caution when it comes to third party. This being third party, you generally expect figures that won't be on par with some of the big licensed companies like Hot Toys. But if you're lucky, we get decent figures that honestly no one else might consider touching. So I took a chance and now have the opportunity to take a much closer look at what the final results are. So let's start with an overall look at everything that's included with the package. And you do get a nice assortment of accessories, which I will say are pretty relevant to the movie. You get some hands, you get his gold-plated guns, some red sunglasses, a spear gun, and a base. And then you do get a small vat as well as some of the removed faces, so it's a nice touch that definitely helps identify these as characters from Face Off. Now I will say some of the accessory choices are interesting, especially when you consider the version of Castor we're getting here, but before I start telling you my overall thoughts on those, let's just jump into the accessories themselves. And we'll start with the hands, as we always do. I like having different hands to pick from because I do enjoy posing my figures a little, and it doesn't always have to be the most dynamic of poses, but I do like the option to do so if I want. And here you're getting some really decent options for holding all of the accessories, and I do think these are actually really good. Paint up on them is all similar, so you're not getting something that looks strange overall, and there are some nice details, like the rings for example on the hands, which are another nice touch, and I do think they're detailed nicely. If you look carefully, you can even see some detail on the nails, so I do have to applaud that effort here by 108 Toys. Next up, we'll jump into the guns, and these are Castor's two golden guns that we see with him early in the movie. Figure does also include a dual holster for both already placed on the figure's belt, and as far as the guns go, I do have to admit that I like what 108 did here from a paint app perspective. The gold elements are nice and just shiny enough to stand out, but they put a good amount of effort into creating a nice blending of the matte black elements with that gold, including the stamp on the handle that's very distinctive, and also the matte black trigger, although not completely screen accurate. Where the guns fail a little bit when compared to other companies, they're fully molded. There's no removable clip, no working slide, they're just molded pieces of plastic. Again, credit to 108 for doing as good of a job as they did here. Maybe had they tried incorporating those other features, these wouldn't have turned out as well. So I prefer what they did here as long as it turned out well, and it did. Next up, you get the spear gun that Castor, or actually Sean, uses at the end of the movie during the final showdown, as a defeated Castor tries to cut and scar up his borrowed face. So look, accessory looks great. I love the detail work in the paint apps. Again, pretty decent for third party, including the red caution stamp and the rack to launch the spear. The arrow itself is a separate piece, and again, nice paint on the spear tip. So overall good accessory, just that this version of Castor in this particular suit doesn't ever use the spear gun. So kind of a funny accessory to include. Now, you also get the glasses, and they're okay. There are things I like and things I don't. But again, I have to look at this through a third party kind of perspective. So what do I like? The frame is actual metal, like a thin metal sheet, so they feel sturdy. I also like that they captured the shape of the lenses with the angular look. So In the movie, the glasses are much more complex, right, with the bridge and the legs all being clipped onto the lenses with no frame. And granted, the detail, especially for the bridge, is much more complex. Here, 108 carried the frame behind the lenses and glued them on top, so they kind of create a simulated illusion of floating lenses. Again, I appreciate it, but on close-ups you'll see that the execution wasn't necessarily the best. Next accessory that's also a little bizarre, you get the magnetic boots from the Air One prison scene. At least I think that was the name of the jail, I don't recall. But they were the metallic heavy boots that were used to track prisoner movement in the facility and to lock down prisoners in the event of a riot or a fight. So I think the company did a good job with these. Sure, they're not as detailed as we might expect. For example, the pistons on the sides are actually fully molded as opposed to being separate pieces, but they are a decent recreation. Just again feels like an odd accessory, maybe just meant for display, because I wouldn't have this version of Castor wear them. In fact, maybe 108 was thinking about providing us with a great jumpsuit as an alternate. Not sure, to be honest, because this is such a specific accessory. Now, next we do get the vat that's used to hold the faces once they've been removed from both main characters during the surgical procedure. Nothing crazy here, just clear plastic with a nice thickened base and a slightly different opacity level to almost simulate some liquid in the container. Now, there is a light up feature here, but my figure didn't come with batteries, so I don't even know what kind it needs. At least that would have been nice to know, but the piece still functions well and looks well overall. And then to go along with it, we do get the two faces for both Sean and Castor, and these look disturbing. First of all, credit to 108 Toys in capturing that cut profile for how the laser cuts the faces during the procedure. And then with the closed eyes, there is a lot of nice paintwork here, even showing the facial hair stubble on both faces. It maybe helps that even in the movie, rightfully so, these look a little unreal. So I think it was an easier thing for 108 to incorporate, and these can be placed in the vat, so it's a pretty cool detail. And finally, you get the base, and while I don't usually showcase simple bases, this one is actually kind of nice. First of all, it's a larger plate, thin profile, and it's heavy. They used actual metal for the grating on top, and I think it's supposed to represent the grating from the prison floor. So that's nice. And there are no names or tags here, so you don't feel like you have to necessarily it feels more like a diorama piece, which is nice. I also do like that the pole holding the crotch grabber is actually transparent. Now, the grabber itself is black metal, but I have to give 108 Toys props for trying to do something to hide that element of the base. It's not 100% effective, but it's a good effort. Alright, so now let's get into the sculpt. It's not great, right? And I have to remind myself again, this is third party. I'll start with this. I do see the likeness to Nicolas Cage. So from a sculpt perspective, I think that's a big positive. The paint apps here are what betrays everything. They're just okay. And I think that's where, again, the face overall just suffers. Detailing on the hair around the forehead, for example, the hairline, not the best. The eyes too, they're just painted on in a bit of a haphazard way, so they lack the realism we've seen with other releases. And even the expression, while I like it because it gives him a little of what Castor Troy personality, the detailing on the teeth just isn't the best. So look, again, big positive has to be that there is a decent likeness to the character, but the eyes really take that away, and so does some of the paintwork. So this is a sculpt that I think will definitely benefit from having the sunglasses on. So now let's look at the rest of the figure, and this is unfortunately where the figure takes some serious hits. First of all, the body, very cheap. You can feel it when you're trying to pose him, and sometimes the joints bend awkwardly, and it feels tough to get them back into position. With time, you can do good things, but just something I noticed immediately. Next thing is really the connection of the sculpt to the body. He has this wide open collar that reveals the connection. It just looks ugly. It just does, unfortunately. It's not surprising again for third party, but the real travesty here, unfortunately, the fit of the clothing. I think the color of the shirt is maybe a little too bright, and I think the popped collar is a bit over exaggerated, and then the material choice for the jacket. While it has some nice detail to the tailoring, it doesn't drape as well on the figure. Pants are okay, but the shirt and the jacket just seem off. Although I do have to give them credit for the paint work on the shoes because these look nice and well done, but the rest of the figure, not the best, and I did feel like I was struggling to try to get things to drape and look a little more natural. So overall thoughts, I personally love the movie, and that's the reason why I got these. And I'm guessing if you ordered these, it was probably for the same reason. But if you're just looking to pick up some figures on a whim, I think there are way better pieces on the market, even from the other third-party companies. Look, you get what you pay for, right? These were relatively inexpensive compared to other better releases, and I think for the cost, they turned out okay, but they're just okay. There's some good things to like here, but equally as many bad things. And I hate to say the biggest issue has to be the clothing. It just doesn't look right. It doesn't look as sleek as you might expect given the character in the movie. I will say this is a huge positive. The sculpt has a likeness, and with the sunglasses on, that likeness only gets better. So for me, it's clear that this is how I'm going to need to display these. Also, the weapons look great, and that was surprising given some of the lack of detailing, but credit where credit is due. But the clothes, and even the shirt, the way it's closed, it has white Velcro that you can see. I think another company might have proceeded with a red Velcro or even a black piece, just something to blend in better and provide that illusion of realism. At the end of the day, the figure's a third-party release, so you can't be surprised, nor should I expect the figure to be on par with Hot Toys or anything like that, so for what it is, I'm okay with it. I'm not blown away, and it won't be making my top lists of the year, but it's a Castor Troy at an affordable price. And I say that because there was an incredible looking custom that I missed, and I also doubt I would have been able to afford him. That easily blows this thing out of the water, but for a budget release, he looks like Castor Troy to me, and I think it's a good base for me to work with. The other thing, I like good accessories, but here, some of them just don't make sense, and it feels like there may have been more to this figure at some point, especially with those boots, which don't really serve a function here. So again, overall thoughts, he's just okay. As much as I love the movie, I can't honestly sit here and tell you I'm blown away by this release, because it feels like a bit of a mixed bag. But the big positive, at least for me, it's just good enough to make me feel like I actually do have Castor Troy in hand, and it isn't nearly as bad as the Fishbone Agent Smith. I always hate when a review isn't super positive, but I have to be honest, and I think I was more disappointed because at first glance, I thought, oh man, I'm in for a surprise, and that just didn't pan out. But it is what it is. And that was a quick look at Castor Troy from 108 Toys. Curious to hear your thoughts on this one, and as always, thanks for watching. And if you are enjoying the content, please consider dropping a like, comment, or subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next one.